Good day, everybody. This is Chris with Mind Divided. I hope this finds you all doing well, and I certainly hope this finds you all being healthy in light of the rather unprecedented times we find ourselves in. And I apologize, it's been a while since I've done a video. Things have just been, as you might imagine, as it is with everybody, things have been pretty interesting and unprecedented in my life as well as many other people's lives. So with that in mind, I want to go ahead and do a quick video. This will be a first impression video. So my bike, I actually, the rear rim on my bike is running a Stans no tubes rim, and it cracked. I ended up getting some cracks, and Stans decided that they would warranty it. So it's really great to see a company stand behind their product. And I'm also having some other work done, and so that will take a while. It'll take several days for all that to get sorted out. In the meantime, the bike shop that I'm having this done at, the Gila Hike and Bike in Silver City, New Mexico. If you're in the area and you need some work done, please show them some love and just show all of the companies that you deal with or have dealt with. If you're in a position financially to do that, I would say try to show them some love, because you know, small businesses in particular are really taking a hit. Many of them are going to be in dire straits if they're not already. And if you are in a position where you can, you know, financially support them with work, then I definitely would suggest doing that to the best of your abilities, of course. But they have allowed me to borrow one of their rental bikes, and this is an extra large 2020 XL Fuel EX5. This is, I think this retails for an MSRP of about $2,000. So this is an their entry-level trail bike. And I've got to say, for what it is, you know, a $2,000 trail bike, for what it is on a scale of 0 to 100, this thing's a fucking go. I have never been so impressed by such an entry-level bike like this. So what are we dealing with? Well, we're dealing with, this is a particular configuration is a 29er. It's got the Bontrager alloy 35 mil ID rims, and attached to it are the XR4 team issue 29 by 2.6. Not only in the front, but in the rear. You can fit a 29 by 2.6 up to 2.6 in the rear, and you don't have any clearance issues. That's pretty remarkable. So really good tires. I consistently run XR4s on my Transition. I run a 2.6 up front and then a 2.4 in the rear. The Sentinel that I have, the warranty only allows me to go up to a 2.4 in the rear, but you can go even larger than that on this particular bike. This is running a RockShox Recon. That's a it's an entry level air. It does have it is an air sprung fork. Again, it's kind of an entry level fork. The handlebars and the grips are Bontrager, as well as the stem. Basically the cockpit is basically in-house Bontrager brand, but it works fine. This is around an 800 millimeter bar, probably about 780, I would say 760 to 780, right in there. I don't know the exact width of the bar. A minimal rise, but it's good, it's stable. It's rocking the Bontrager Trans X dropper seat post, 130 millimeters of drop. And this is the exact same one that I run on my Sentinel. I like them. They don't have, you know, a huge amount of drop, you know, some of the 150, 170, even more, but I like these because they're very cheap, very reliable, and very easy to service. So overall, I do like the dropper seat post on my bike as well as this bike. This is running just some real entry-level Shimano brakes. This is a dual piston, not a whole lot in the way of customizable adjustability like you get on the SLX XT brakes. But they are a little anemic, but they do get the job done. They almost feel more like a SRAM brake because, you know, you do have to pull a little harder to get a little more power out of them, and so it does feel almost like they modulate a little more than the XTs and the SLXs that I'm used to running on my other bikes, but they get the job done. This is running a 100, so that's a 140 millimeter travel up front. I believe it's a 180 millimeter rotor, twin piston, just entry-level Shimano brakes. This has the knock block technology built into it. So essentially what Trek has done on pretty much all of their fuel, I believe their fuel, their slash, and their remedies, is they have almost a perfectly straight down tube. It makes for a very supportive, very rigid bike without a whole lot of flex. Unfortunately, what that means is that the crown of the fork, if you turn the crown too far, that can actually run into this straight down tube. And so what they've done is they have some padding here, and then they've built in kind of like a blocking mechanism. So if you turn this too far, that's as far as it'll let me turn it. It just kind of prevents the crown from running into the down tube, or it's supposed to prevent it. I don't know what would happen if you were in a crash where you hit the handlebar and spun it over. It's probably conceivable that it could hit. They're running 130 millimeters of travel via 55 millimeters of stroke. This is just a entry-level RockShox Deluxe Select Plus shock. 55 millimeters of stroke translates to 130 millimeters of travel. Fairly basic. It does have a rebound. It does have a compression, so it's either fully open or locked out. I haven't had to lock it out yet. I just leave it fully open. My experience with the entry-level RockShox rear shocks have been pretty good. I think the Deluxe is, I think it has really good compression, and you know, bang for your buck. It's a good shock because it's going to support you and it's going to give you a pretty good pedaling platform, but it doesn't have all of the different compression settings, high and low speed, that you'd find on the higher end shocks. But it gets the job done. It has a very nice progressive feel to it. Trek has redesigned their rear suspension somewhat. They for many years have been running what's called a full floater, where this shock here would actually attach the linkage, this rear linkage here would actually come out and attach to the shock, and the shock would kind of float between the upper and lower linkage, and that would make it very linear and very responsive. But I think it you know, can bottom out a little harshly, and I think now with advances in compression technology in rear shocks, Trek has gone to mounting to the lower part of the down tube, and so that's what you see here. You don't see that full floater design anymore. However, they still have maintained the ABP, the active braking pivot system. So essentially what they've done is they've done something very unique in the rear here. So typically when you run into your kind of your standard bikes, you have what's called a 4-bar suspension, where you have linkage here and here on the other side, kind of behind, or rather in front of the axle here, and this whole link would then be called a horsed link or a 4-bar link, and that makes for a very responsive active rear end, but can be kind of tough on the pedaling. That's what I run on my Sentinel, is a 4-bar suspension. The other really common type of suspension that you run into is what's called single pivot, linkage driven single pivot, where you don't have any pivot points at all. You just have, this is solid here, you just have a solid rear end, and you have a continuous bar that goes all the way here, without that pivot right in here that you'd see on a 4-bar. Now the difference between this and a more traditional single pivot design is that there is a pivot point right here. So this actually articulates, this moves, and what this does is this separates, essentially it separates the pedaling forces here from the braking forces up here, and it allows the rear end to, the suspension to remain active under braking, and that's why they call it active braking pivot. Essentially what it is it's a it's kind of a split pivot design. It's pretty similar to what you see on like a Salsa, the Dave Weigel design, and there's actually a whole history of a whole legal history behind Trek and Dave Weigel that I won't go into here. But anyway, what I'm saying is this is great suspension. It's pretty responsive, great pedaling platform. It has pretty good progression. I'm pretty astonished just how good the rear suspension is, given that this is a $2,000 bike. This runs a race face crank with just a standard press fit bottom bracket, and this is running a Shimano Dior 1x10, not a 1x11 or 1x12, but a 1x10 speed. Look at that nice little dork disc there, huh? But hey, this is a rental bike and they're letting me use it, so I'm not going to complain. So this is Shimano Dior 1x10. So you're not getting a huge amount of range, but believe it or not, the range is actually pretty good. It's not bad. It feels good. It feels snappy. It climbs real well. I don't have a whole lot of complaints. I mean, it's certainly I do miss having, you know, the 50 or 51 if you're running a 1x12 Shimano, but you know, it works out okay. Race face crank, so you have the range that you need. And Shimano, I really like the way Shimano shifts. It shifts very well. The shifting is a little different from the SRAM, the NX, SX, GX, X01, etc. And that at least at the lower end, I don't know about like the higher end SRAM, but as far as like all the way up to GX shifters, the cool thing about Shimano is when you're shifting into your smaller, harder gears, you can either push up or down and it will shift either way. So it's kind of, you know, it's kind of nice. It gives you a little more flexibility when you're shifting there. And so it's just kind of a neat little thing. It's, you know, not a deal breaker one way or the other, but it's a neat little option that, you know, Shimano, I just like Shimano drivetrains. In fact, I'm going to a full Shimano SLX XT drivetrain on the Transition, and maybe I'll do a video on that when I get that all done. So that's kind of the bike review. And again, I gotta say, on a 0 to 100 scale, this is a major fucking go of a bike. If I were to have any complaints about it, and again, this is a $2,000 bike. This is an entry-level trail bike. Probably my two major complaints are going to be the brakes. The brakes are a little anemic. They're serviceable and they're fine. You just got to put a little more pressure into them. Might not be a one finger brake going down steep terrain like you would with a higher end Shimano, but they'll get the job done. And then probably the biggest complaint, if you will, that I have about this bike is the front suspension. It is the fork, again, is very entry level, and the front of the bike just doesn't feel nearly as good as the rear of the bike. And I'm not sure what the width is, or what the diameter is on the stanchions, how wide these are rather. I'm guessing somewhere around 30 to 32 millimeters. And you know, I'm coming from a Lyric. I'm running a Lyric which has 35 mil stanchions, so they're wider, they're a little more supportive, they don't have the lateral flex like this does. So this does okay for the most part, but when you hit a lot of chunk, or if you hit a big, if you're hitting jumps, for example, the fork is going to flex a little bit. It's going to feel a little squirrely. It's going to get really harsh when you get far into the travel. And that's just, you know, it's just an entry-level fork. And so, you know, if I were to upgrade anything with this bike, I would definitely say the front fork would need a good upgrade. It's serviceable, but that would be my only major complaint. But again, we're talking about a $2,000 bike. MSRP, you might be able to get them for even cheaper. And boy, for your money, this bike has completely surprised me. The geometry has been updated a little bit this year. It's a little longer, it's a little slacker, and the seat tube angle is a little steeper. It's not kind of on the level of what you're seeing with Transition and Yeti and, you know, Santa Cruz. It's not, you know, super progressive, but it's definitely more contemporary. It's just a good feeling bike. I mean, this bike feels better. I hate to admit it, but it feels better overall. Just geometry, ease of riding, pedal efficiency than my Kona Process 153. And obviously the Process 153 is a more enduro, downhill oriented bike than this is. This really is a trail bike, so I guess it makes sense that this feels like a better trail bike than my Kona. But boy, you can't go wrong for the price. It's a hell of a deal. So that's my initial bike check and initial impression of the Trek Fuel EX5. This is just my first ride, so I'm gonna have several days on this bike, and if anything comes up, I'll be sure to do an update. All right, guys, I hope you guys are doing well, and I hope you're staying healthy, and just please take care. And we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.